Greetings, it is I, Tantus Narvan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue our discussion on Dungeons & Dragons, of course the 5th edition of D&D. We've been talking about DMing, dungeon mastering. We've been going over about information to do with your world you're building as your DM, or understanding the kind of things your DM needs to build the world if you're just a player. So let's continue what we were talking about. We were generally discussing settlements before. Let's get into a little more detail about said settlements. Now, settlements have different information that kind of defines what they are, and the book gives 3 important examples of them: the town, the village, and the city. They're really divided by population first and foremost. So that's the first bit of information under each of these little statistic blocks that you will see in the book is population. After that, it will mention generally what kind of government a settlement of that size will have, what kind of commerce it's going to have, any kind of special organizations it may or may not have, such as churches. And then it will give a little bit of basic information about what kind of thing it is. Like a small town is probably going to be more rural and farming in comparison to a city, which is more commerce-based in the first place. So when we talk about these settlements, though, we have to talk about the atmosphere of them, the atmosphere of the world in general. Because atmosphere is very important. Think about this. When your people are walking up to the gates of a city for the first time, what do they notice? What kind of sensory information are you giving them? What kind of things brings this place to life? And that's the point of atmosphere, to bring a location to life. Now, what you should really do is you should focus on one aspect and expand from that. Come up with one major concept around a city. Let's say it smells like bread is baking over a small town. Why is this? Maybe there's this bakery which spreads its smell over the entire city. Things like that that give a city the atmosphere, that you start with one factor, whether it's just something that's visual, whether it's something they would hear, something they would smell, one sense, one thing they would notice with one of their senses, and expand and extrapolate on that to add this atmosphere to the entire town. And this isn't the only thing which adds atmosphere. There are a lot of factors to it. The climate and the terrain of the area that the village is located in affect the atmosphere. It could be in a cold area. It could be in a snowy area. These things affect it. The general government or the political powers will also shape it, whoever's in charge. The origin of the town, or what kind of inhabitants have, also shape the town. And even commercial aspects can shape the town. What kind of businesses and such are in town can give shape and add to the atmosphere of the town. Now, when we speak of government, we do have to sort of dive into it more. Most governments in a D&D game are going to be feudal in nature, the kind of government that was held in medieval Europe. It mimics that very often. Now, you don't have to have that as your government per se, but that is, of course, the one that is most often assumed upon, especially in pre-made adventures or world settings. Granted, the book gives information on the basics of feudal society, giving you some details on how to establish it and build it, because, again, it's the most common. But if you should want another type of government or hierarchy, they do have an entire list that includes feudalism in it that you can look through and see some of the other types of governments, just by general idea of what it is. And that way you get an idea of any of these would be more important. And these include more realistic ones or more fanciful ones. So it has a wide selection that you can choose from if you want just something different for how your society is organized. Now let's talk about commerce, because that's another thing that seems critical to both the essence of a settlement and its atmosphere. Commerce is, of course, trade, and it's very important to player characters, because maybe they want to buy some supplies, buy some weapons or armor, get a horse, stay at a room, get some food somewhere. All this relates to commerce in and of itself, so you have to look at what kind of commerce a town would have. Do they have permanent traders? Do they have people that permanently sell goods in a town? Do they have traveling merchants that are the main way that they gain supplies? Are they reliant on another town or settlement that gives them most of their supplies? Effectively, they have a trade caravan going on between the two of them that they're supplied from somewhere else. Again, also, how do they get their news? Is it the traveling merchants that mainly give them news? Other sources? If there's not a lot of traveling merchants, they probably don't know a lot about what's going on to the outside world. On the other hand, if there's ones that frequently go there, maybe they do. And the amount of commerce in a town can reflect it differently, too. It could be a small village with a high commerce rate because it's an important trade hub, or it could be a city with very little for whatever reason. It makes it more interesting when you have these juxtapositions, but it also does show what's necessary with commerce. Now, as a reflection of commerce, I do want to talk about currency, because that is another important thing. In the Player's Handbook, it just mentions the basic currencies: gold pieces, silver pieces, copper pieces, electrum pieces, platinum pieces, the basic money. And this is sort of the generalized money. This is generally what you're using as money. But every world, every land, every country might have their own currency. It's very rare that a currency reflects itself globally. And oftentimes, you'll have different currencies for different areas. But the thing is, most times, currency is accepted everywhere. Usually it's gold. Gold is gold wherever you're going. Now, can be exceptions. Maybe something with one of the governments doesn't like gold from a certain place, if they're at war with each other. Or you could have someone that just wants to pick a fight with a foreigner and doesn't want to take your money. There's a lot of reasons why your money could be bad there, but they're usually more culturally based rather than, I have gold, it's gold. It's less because of the currency you have and more because of the people that would be willing to accept it. But generally speaking, you are going to consider that once you have money, you can spend it anywhere, whether from wherever that money is originally from in the first place. So the book does give an example of a currency system, the one for Forgotten Realms. It gives the basic bits of information about how each of the countries breaks down how they see money, or the different types of money there are. It doesn't get into details on the individual nations. You could consider that most of them would have their own little takes on things, and you could probably look those up if you have any of your characters going into them. But it gives a good bit of information on how currency works in the Forgotten Realms setting. The book mentions making your own currency system, because you can. It gives a little bit of detail. I'm not going to go into it too much, because you can make your currency system as simple as complex as you want, and this is a little more for if you want to add some more details to your currency system that you're building. I would look over it just to make sure, but assume that most currency systems, they're going to be the pieces I mentioned before, gold pretty much being the standard and everything kind of being up or down from there, and you just work off that your characters will be spending money. So that's it for today. I finished talking a little bit more about settlements. I talked about some of the basics of them, basic information about them. I talked about the atmosphere of places, governments, commerce, and your currency systems. Next time, I'm going to dive into languages, factions, and hopefully I'll reach magic and talking about it in your world. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows your support for the channel, the empire, the work I do. And until the next time, I bid you farewell.